In August of 2025, a single mine permit expired in southern China, and the price of the most important metal of the century jumped overnight. The mine was in Jiangxi. On its own, it produced only around 3% of the world's lithium. But when its owner, the giant battery maker CATL, could not get the permit renewed and paused the operation, traders panicked. In days, lithium prices spiked because the market suddenly remembered how fragile the supply of this metal really is. Here is the strange part. Weeks earlier, that same lithium had been one of the worst investments on Earth. The price had fallen so far, for so long, that mines across 2 continents were shutting their gates and walking away. You would think a metal the whole world is racing to secure, the metal inside every electric car and every phone, would be a guaranteed fortune to dig up. It is the opposite. Lithium is one of the most violent boom and bust businesses in mining. By the end of this video, you will know what a lithium mine costs to build, where the money really comes from, and why owning the metal everyone wants can still bankrupt you. Decided by a future screen you do not control. The buy-in. Start with what you are actually buying, because there are 2 completely different businesses hiding under one word. First is hard rock. In places like Australia, lithium comes locked inside a rock called spodumene, in ancient formations called pegmatites. You mine it like any other rock, crush it, and concentrate it into spodumene concentrate. Fast to build and fast to turn off, which matters more than it sounds. Second is brine. In the high deserts of Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia, lithium is dissolved in underground salt water. You pump it into vast evaporation ponds and let the sun work, for months, sometimes over a year, until the lithium concentrates enough to process. Cheaper to run, far slower, and nearly impossible to switch on and off. Either way, the entry ticket is enormous. A serious hard rock mine and its plant runs into the hundreds of millions of dollars. A brine operation with its ponds and chemical plants into the billions. The timeline is brutal, too. A new hard rock mine takes roughly 5 to 7 years from the decision to build to commercial production. Hold that number. 5 to 7 years. You commit the money on today's price, and you do not sell your first real ton until a world that may look nothing like today. What you inherit. You inherit a price you do not set and cannot predict. Lithium does not trade like oil or gold on one deep, transparent exchange. For years, it was sold through private contracts, and the public spot price, especially the one out of China, can lurch violently on thin trading. Own a lithium mine, and you are strapped to that number. And that number does something almost no other commodity does. Watch it move. Battery-grade lithium carbonate in China peaked around $81,000 a ton at the end of 2022. By the middle of 2025, it had fallen to around $8,000, a drop of more than 80%. Spodumene, the rock version, fell even harder, from around $8,000 a ton to under $1,000. Read what that does. At the top, every lithium miner on Earth looked like a genius. At the bottom, most were losing money on every ton they dug, and some stopped. You inherit a business whose selling price can fall by 80%, while your costs barely move. You also inherit grade, which quietly decides who lives. 2 mines can both produce spodumene, but the one with the richer ore makes its concentrate more cheaply and survives prices that kill the other. The quality of the rock you happen to own is not a detail. It is the whole difference between profit and a padlocked gate. So where does the money come from? The revenue layers. Number 1, and dominant, is the lithium itself. Spodumene concentrate sold to converters, or carbonate and hydroxide sold to battery makers. When prices are high, this stream is a torrent of cash. When they are low, it can turn negative, costing more to produce than it sells for. Number 2 is byproduct. Some hard rock mines like Bald Hill in Australia also produce tantalum, a rare metal used in electronics. Others recover tin. These do not run the business, but in a downturn, they can be the few dollars that keep a mine breathing. Number 3 is position on the cost curve, a revenue layer, even though it sounds like a cost. Every mine on Earth lines up from cheapest to most expensive to produce a ton. When the price falls, it falls down that line, switching off the expensive mines first. If you are the cheapest producer, A crash is not only survivable, it is a gift because it kills your competitors and leaves the market to you. Number 4, the long game. Still being open when the cycle turns. In a business this violent, survival itself is a strategy. The mine still running when the price snaps back captures everything. One that shut has to spend a fortune and a year just to restart. Listen to that again. At the bottom of the crash, in late 2024, only one hard rock lithium mine in Australia was reported to be clearly profitable at the spot price. 1. In the country that mines about half the world's lithium, at the depth of the downturn, nearly every mine was underwater, and a single operation was comfortably making money. That mine was Greenbushes, and the reason is the whole lesson of this industry. Its ore is the highest grade in the world. It produces lithium so cheaply that a price which bankrupts everyone else still leaves it in profit. Listen to that again. The metal was identical. Everyone sold the same lithium into the same collapsed market. The difference between making money and shutting the gates was not the price, which everyone shared. It was the cost, which they did not. In a commodity crash, you cannot control what you sell for. You can only control what it costs you to dig, and that is decided years earlier by the rock you chose to buy. Now look at the bill that keeps running while the price falls. The ledger. Energy first, and it is heavy. Crushing hard rock and running it through processing takes enormous power, and a brine operation's chemical plants and pumps are no lighter. This cost does not care what lithium is selling for. Then, the strip and the haul. In an open pit, before you reach ore, you move overburden, the waste rock on top, and that ratio of waste to ore grinds on every day. Diesel, trucks, tires, wages, whether the price is high or low. Then, chemicals and water. Turning concentrate into battery-grade carbonate or hydroxide is a chemical business, hungry for reagents. Brine consumes staggering amounts of water in some of the driest places on Earth, which is both a cost and a growing political fight with the communities nearby. Then people and remoteness. These mines sit in the Australian outback, the Andes, the African bush. You fly workers in, house them, feed them, and pay a premium for the isolation. Underneath all of it sits the reason the crash is so deadly. Most of these costs are fixed. They stay roughly the same, whether lithium is $80,000 a ton or 8. So when the price falls by 80%, it does not shave your profit. It reaches past the profit and starts eating the mine alive. The trap. Here is the trap, and it is written into the clock. A lithium mine takes 5 to 7 years to build, but the price can complete an entire boom and bust in about 2. So you make the biggest decision, whether to spend hundreds of millions at one point in the cycle and receive your answer at a completely different one. Watch how cruel that timing is. Prices exploded through 2021 and 2022. Every miner and investor looked at that peak and rushed to approve new mines and expansions. Those projects took years to build. They came online right into the crash of 2024, flooding a market that had already turned, driving the price down into their own faces. The boom tells everyone to build. That building creates the glut. The glut becomes the bust. And the bust arrives exactly when all that new supply switches on. The market punishes you for believing it. That is the trap in one sentence. You are forced to bet on the price of lithium half a decade out, and everyone making that same bet is what destroys the price when the day arrives. To see how deep this pattern runs, visit a mine in Western Australia that spent 100 years digging the wrong metals while sitting on the most valuable lithium deposit on Earth. A history digression. In 1888, prospectors came to a place called Greenbushes in the forests south of Perth, chasing tin. They found it, they dug it, and Greenbushes became the longest continuously operated mining field in all of Western Australia. For decades, tin was the prize. Then, from the 1940s, they mined tantalum there too, a metal the electronics age would need. Generation after generation worked that ground, pulling out whatever the world happened to want. And the whole time, running through that same rock was a mineral almost nobody cared about. Spodumene, the lithium ore. It sat in one of the richest pegmatite formations on the planet, a deposit around 2.5 billion years old, And for most of the mine's life, it was close to worthless. No electric car, no smartphone. Lithium was a niche chemical. Lithium ore was only identified there in the late 1970s, and the first lithium plant at Greenbushes did not start until 1985. Those who dug tin there in the 1800s stood on top of the metal that would one day power the world, and had no idea, because the world did not need it yet. Understand what that tells you. A mine's value is not decided by geology alone. It is decided by what the world wants at the moment you can sell it. The rock at Greenbushes did not change in 140 years. Everything around it did. The death spiral case. Now walk the fall of a mine that did everything the boom told it to do. Bald Hill, in Western Australia, was a hard rock lithium and tantalum mine. It had a difficult history, opening and stopping once already when prices were weak. Then the great boom arrived. In November of 2022, with lithium near its all-time high, Bald Hill reopened into the best price environment the metal had ever seen. For a while it worked. High prices covered the costs, and the mine ran. The same boom reopening Bald Hill was reopening and expanding mines everywhere at once, all chasing that record price. That wave of new supply became the glut, and the glut became the crash. Watch the spiral turn. The lithium price fell, and fell, past 80% down. Bald Hill's costs did not fall with it. Every ton it produced started losing money, with no rich, world-beating grade to fall back on. Unlike Greenbushes, it had no place to hide on the cost curve. In November of 2024, exactly 2 years after it reopened into the boom, Bald Hill was placed into care and maintenance. Gates closed, workers left. It was not alone. Core Lithium halted its Finniss mine in early 2024, and others curtailed and idled, all caught in the same vice. Reopened at the top, killed by the crash their own building helped create. Bald Hill was never a bad mine. It was a fairly ordinary one, in an extraordinary cycle, holding rock that was not rich enough to survive the bottom. The survivors. The survivors do one thing above all others. They own the best rock. Greenbushes survives every crash, because its grade is the highest in the world, which puts it at the very bottom of the cost curve. That is the single most important habit in this business, and it is decided before you dig a single ton. You do not outmanage a lithium crash. You outgrade it. They also stay integrated. The strongest players do not just sell raw concentrate at the mercy of the spot price. They own the conversion plants that turn it into battery chemicals, and sometimes stakes in the mines themselves, capturing margin along the chain instead of betting everything on one volatile number. They also keep debt low and nerves steady because they know the cycle. They expand carefully in the boom and keep enough cash to survive the bust, so that when the price snaps back, and in lithium it always eventually does, they are still open, still producing, and their bankrupt competitors are not. The verdict. Does this actually work? It can. Spectacularly. At the top of the cycle, a good lithium mine is one of the most profitable holes on Earth, printing money as the world bids frantically for every ton. The metal is essential, and long-term demand for it is only climbing. But be honest about the ride. You commit hundreds of millions or billions on a 5 to 7 year build, betting on a price you cannot predict or control. You will live through crashes of 80% or more, where the metal everyone calls the new oil trades below what it costs you to produce. Your survival will be decided not by how essential lithium is, but by one thing chosen before you started: the grade of your rock. Get that right. Own the cheapest ton in the world, and you survive every winter and own every spring. Get it wrong, and you become Bald Hill. A good mine sitting on real lithium, closed, because the market fell below your cost, and did not care that the world still wanted what you had. You never really owned the lithium. You owned a bet on a price no one can control, backed by the one thing you could: the rock. The metal in the ground was never the question. The only question was whether you could pull it out for less than the next crash would pay you.